Let me read a story by Haruki Murakami. The title is With the Beatles. What I find strange about growing old isn't that I have gotten older. Not that the useful me from the past has, without my realizing it, aged. What catches me off guard is, rather, how people from the same generation as me have become elderly, how all the pretty, vivacious girls I used to know are not old enough to have a couple of grandkids. It's a little disconcerting, sad even. Though I never feel sad at the fact that I have similarly aged. I think what makes me feel sad about the girls I knew growing old is that it forces me to admit all over again that my youthful dreams are gone forever. The death of a dream can be, in a way, sadder than that of a living being. Sometimes it all seems so unfair. There's one girl, a woman who used to be a girl, whom I remember well. I don't know her name, though. And naturally, I don't know where she is now or what she's doing. What I do know about her is that she went to the same high school as I did, and was in the same year since the badge on her shirt was the same color as mine, and that she really liked the Beatles. Other than that, I know nothing about her. This was in 1964, at the height of Beatlemania. It was early autumn. The new school semester had begun, and things were starting to fall into a routine again. She was hurrying down the long, dim hallway of the old school building, her skirt fluttering. I was the only other person there. She was clutching a LP to her chest as if it were something precious. The LP with the Beatles, the one with the striking black and white photograph of the four Beatles in half shadow. For some reason, I'm not sure why, I have a clear memory that it was the original, British version of the album, not the American or the Japanese version. She was a beautiful girl, at least to me then. She looked gorgeous. She wasn't tall, but she had long black hair, slim legs, and a lovely fragrance. That could be a false memory, I don't know. Maybe she didn't give off any scent at all. But that's what I remember, as if when she passed, an enchanting, alluring fragrance wafted in my direction. She had me under her spell, that beautiful, nameless girl clutching with the Beatles to her chest. My heart started to pound. I gasped for breath, and it was as if all sound had ceased, as if I had sunk to the bottom of a pool. All I could hear was a bell ringing faintly, deep in my ears, as if someone were desperately trying to send me a vital message. All this took only 10 or 15 seconds. It was over before I knew it, and the critical message contained there, like the core of all dreams, disappeared, just like most important things do that happen in life. A dimly lit hallway in a high school, a beautiful girl, the hem of her skirt swirling with the Beatles. That was the only time I saw that girl. In the 2 years between then and my graduation, we never once crossed paths again, which is pretty strange if you think about it. The high school I attended was a fairly large public school at the top of a hill in Kobe, with about 650 students in each grade. We were the so-called baby boomer generation, so there were a lot of us. Not everyone knew one another. In fact, I didn't know the names or recognize the vast majority of the kids in the school. But still, since I went to school almost every day and often used that hallway, it struck me as almost outrageous that I never once saw that beautiful girl again. I looked for her every time I used that hallway. Had she vanished like a smoke, or on that early autumn afternoon, had I seen not a real person but a vision of some kind? Perhaps I had idolized her in my mind at the instant that we passed each other, to the point where even if I actually saw her again, I wouldn't recognize her. I think the last possibility is that most likely. Later, I got to know a few women and went out with them, and every time I met a new woman, it felt as though I were unconsciously longing to relive that dazzling moment I had experienced in a dim school hallway back in the fall of 1964. That silent, insistent thrill in my heart, the breathless feeling in my chest, the bell ringing gently in my ears. Sometimes I was able to recapture this feeling, at other times not. Unfortunately, the bell didn't ring enough. And other times I managed to grab hold of it, only to let it slip through my fingers. In any event, the emotions that surged when this happened came to serve as a kind of a gauge I used to measure the intensity of my yearning. When I couldn't get that sensations in the real world, I would quietly let my memory of those feelings awaken inside me. In this way, memory became one of my most valued emotional tools, a means of survival, even. Like a warm kitten, softly curled inside an oversized coat pocket, fast asleep. On to the Beatles. A year before I saw that girl was when the Beatles first became wildly popular. By April of 1964, they had captured the top 5 spots on the American singles charts. Pop music had never seen anything like Beatlemania. These were the 5 hit songs. Number 1, Can't Buy Me Love. Number 2, Twist and Shout. Number 3, She Loves You. 4, I Want to Hold Your Hand. And number 5, Please, Please Me. The single Can't Buy Me Love alone had more than 2 million pre-orders, making it a double platinum before the actual record went on sale. The Beatles were, of course, also hugely popular in Japan. Turn on the radio and the chances were you would hear one of their songs. I liked their songs myself and knew all their hits. Asked me to sing them, and I could. At home when I was studying or pretending to study, most of the time I had the radio blasting away. But truth be told, I was never a fervent Beatles fan. I never actively sought after their songs. For me, it was a passive listening, pop music flowing out of the tiny speakers of my Panasonic transistor radio. In one ear and after the other, barely registering, background music for my adolescence, musical wallpaper. In high school and in college, I didn't buy a single Beatles record. I was much more into jazz and classical music, and that was what I listened to when I wanted to focus on music. I saved up to buy jazz records, requested tunes by Miles Davis and Thelonious Monk at the jazz bars, and went to the classical music concerts. It was only much later that I bought my first Beatles record and seriously listened to their music. But that's a story for another time. This might seem strange, but it wasn't until I was in my mid-30s that I sat down and listened to with the Beatles from beginning to end. Despite the fact that the image of the girl carrying that LP in the hallway of our high school had never left me, for the longest time I didn't feel like actually giving it a listen. I wasn't particularly interested in knowing what sort of music was etched into the grooves of the vinyl disc she had clutched so tightly. While I was in my mid-30s, well past childhood and adolescence, my first impression of the album was that it wasn't that great, or at least not the kind of music to take your breath away. Of the 14 tracks on the album, 6 were covers of other artists' work. The covers of the marvelous Please Mr. Postman and Chuck Berry's Roll Over Beethoven were well done, and they impress me even when I listen to them now. But still, there were cover versions. All of the 8 original songs, apart from Paul's All My Loving, none were amazing. There were no hit singles, and while I applaud their enterprising spirit in putting out albums that included only new material and no recycled singles, to my ears the Beatles' first album, Please Please Me, recorded basically in one take, was more vibrant and compelling. Even so, likely thanks to Beatles fans' unquenchable desire for new songs, this second album debuted in the #1 spot in the UK, a position it held for 21 weeks. In the US, the title of the album was changed to Meet the Beatles and included some different tracks, though the cover design stayed almost the same. What probably accounted for this phenomenal success was their fans' passionate desire, like a traveler's thirst for water after traversing a desert, for a fresh supply of Beatles music, plus the memorable monochrome cover photo in half shadow of the 4 of them. What pulled me in was the vision of that girl clutching the album as if it were something priceless. Take away the photograph on the album cover, and the scene might not have bewitched me as it did. There was the music, for sure, but there was something else, something far bigger, and in an instant, that tableau was etched in my ear, a kind of spiritual landscape that could be found only there, at a set age, in a set place, and at a set moment in time. For me, the major event of the following year, 1965, wasn't President Johnson honoring the bombing of North Vietnam and the escalation of the war, or the discovery of a new species of wildcat on the island of Arrowmote, but the fact that I acquired a girlfriend. She had been in the same class as me in freshman year, but it wasn't until sophomore year that we started going out. To avoid any misunderstanding, I would like to preface this by saying that I'm not good looking and was never a star athlete, and my grades in school were less than stellar. My singing left something to be desired too, and I didn't have a way with words. While I was in school and in the years after that, I never once had girls flocking around me. That's one of the few things I can say with certainty in this uncertain life. Still, there always seemed to be a girl around who was, for whatever reason, attracted to me. I have no clue why, but I was able to enjoy some pleasant, intimate times with those girls. I got to be good friends with some of them, and occasionally took it to the next level. The girl I'm talking about here was one of these, the first girl I had a really close relationship with. This first girlfriend of mine was petite and charming. That summer, I went on dates with her once a week. One afternoon, I kissed her small yet full lips and touched her breasts through her bra. She was wearing a sleeveless white dress, and her hair had a citron shampoo scent. Now that this is getting a little bit too intimate, so I will stop here and read it next time.